slab of hickory. I want to create a floating live edge look that's just mounted directly onto the brick without any brackets or anything holding up the mantel, and so it should look really cool. Now, this hickory slab on one end has got some rotten areas, so the circular saw had no problem whatsoever cutting that, but this other end is very solid, and so I went to the reciprocating saw or the Sawzall, and I just had a lot of trouble with this. The blade kept coming out, and so I just got frustrated. I finally got enough cut to where it started to get into the rotten area to where I could just hold this thing up and just break it on into two pieces. And since I did that, I needed to clean up the back edge that would mount up against the brick wall. To clean up the edge, I got out the random orbital sander just to go to work on it. I think I was using 80 grit, but it just wasn't doing the job, I guess, fast enough. So I got out the hand plane and went to work on it as best I could. But if you'll notice, I'm working on a couple of sawhorses here, and so it wasn't the best setup. So I just did the best I could. I could have gone inside and used the vise, but I wasn't through sanding yet. So this hickory has some really nice grain to it. I'm really excited about it. This is just a water-based polyacrylic clear finish, and it just really brings out that grain. But I'll show you more about that later. The first thing I wanted to do is figure out, do I have the right length? This slab that I've got is about 5 feet, and I didn't want to shorten it any more than that, so I just made a couple of marks, marked out where I wanted to drill the holes, made sure it was level, and then I just started drilling holes with a hammer drill. Now I'm going in the brick right here because I don't want to go in the grout. And so after I drill the holes, I mount these little sleeves that are just called drop-in anchors, and there's a tool to set them to where it will expand those anchors up against the brick inside that hole to make a nice sturdy mounting location. Now I'm going to be using 10-inch bolts. I'm going to cut them off to the desired length, and I do that for all 5 bolts. Now I could have very easily just put the bolts into the anchors that I've already got in the brick and just cut them off inside, but I didn't want to use an angle grinder in my house. So here I'm whitewashing the brick. I'm going to do this before I mount the mantel. I'm not going to get into how I painted this brick, but that's the look that my wife and I were going for. Now here are the drop-in anchors in the brick. So once I zoom in, you'll be able to tell that these anchors have threads on the inside, and that's to accept a bolt. These are hex head bolts. Like I mentioned, they're 10-inch, and I cut off what I didn't need. And so now that I've got the fireplace painted, I can just twist these in by hand and then tighten everything up with a pair of vice grips. And really, honestly, this was just as easy as driving them in as if the heads were on there and using an impact wrench or something. I got them tight enough to where they weren't loose at all. It was really, really secure, so I had no worries that this was going to be good enough. Now, to get the location of the bolts and to know where to drill the holes, I don't really show it here, but this kind of gives you an idea. I laid the mantel on top of these bolts, and I took a pencil and just traced out where the bolts were. That way, I could just transfer those marks up to the back edge of this mantel, make my mark in the center, and drill my holes. Now, for a little extra holding power, I'm just applying some really strong silicone to the bolts and the brick. I wasn't worried that the mantel was going to fall off or anything, but I just tend to overdo things. That's just me. So here I am aligning the bolts with the holes, and I'm sliding it on just enough to get my hammer and mallet so I can finish pounding this thing into place, and everything turned out just fine. I want to give a huge shout out to John Malecki. I reached out to him because I knew this was his jam. He gave me a few tips, so thank you, John. If you're new here or you're not subscribed to the channel, I want to encourage you to go ahead and subscribe. Hit that red button. I'd love to have you back here each and every week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.